Ngwatilo MAWIYOO, poet. Welcome to the JSO interview.
Thank you.
Poet, Kenyan, 50th anniversary of our independence. Is there such a thing as Kenyan poetry?
Yes and no. We have the gift of the Kenya schools and drama festivals that has given us a kind of performance aesthetic of how we do poetry by and large. But we haven't actually developed any ideas about what a Kenyan aesthetic around poetry would be. There isn't any writings that I'm aware of that does that or anything like that. So
no criticism?
No, but even, you know, like what, say, Frank O'Hara did, you know, the manifestos, like what poetry must do by us, for us. There's ideas about what African poetry should do and has, you know, how it's supposed to look like, and, you know, which is kind of, I think, still stuck in kind of pastoral, kind of not quite post-independent Africa, as it were. But we don't have a Kenyan one, certainly.
You mentioned the Kenya Schools Drama Festival.
Yeah.
That is the source. Do I see Ngwatilo MAWIYOO at some point in her educational life standing up and saying, this is my poem, and then bowing to the judges, and then, yes, and then reciting? Is that where you come from? No.
I actually wasn't very interested in poetry in my school days, for good or for bad. You know, like I did, you know, I was participating in the drama festival in primary school. In high school, we were banned and disallowed from going, so I didn't actually go. But I'm familiar with how it's done and how it looks like, and people. And
do you think it's for the good? Do you think it's for the ultimate good of having this recipe, this prescriptive notion of what a poem ought to be?
It gets old and old for me. I mean, there are some people who love it, but if we understand poetry by what it looks like, we're not really understanding poetry, we're understanding performance, I think. We're talking about how we do performance and how we value performance and how, you know, our ideas on performance, you know, but it's not our ideas on poetry. I think I would say perhaps it's our ideas on how we present poetry.
Right.
You know, it's a very hard.
But the craft is not part of that definition.
No.
So I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
If I said your education, your higher education, where did it take place? Are you a product of the Kenyan land?
Half and half.
Right.
So I went, you know, did my primary school here, Nairobi Primary, then went to Moi Nairobi Girls, and then had a little stint in Tanzania. I went to school in Dar es Salaam, and then had a scholarship and went to St. Lawrence University in the US. And I actually came to poetry while doing a kind of research trip in South Africa, in Johannesburg, so listening to Lebo Mashile, Linton Kwesi Johnson, and those kinds of people. And then I went back to school and started studying it and you know, taking classes in poetry.
Have you, in essence, therefore, decided to be a professional poet? This is going to be 90% of your life from now on.
Yes, although I'm kind of broadening that out. I'd almost, I mean, I've been, you know, some people have critiqued me about having not taught as much. I just haven't felt able to teach as much, you know, but I'd kind of like to move into that as I feel stronger and powerful in what I know, and not just this is what Ngwatilo believes about poetry and this is Ngwatilo's way of poetry, but even being able to look at other people's poetry objectively with what they're trying to do with it.
So what were the influences? What were the seminal influences? It's not the Kenya Schools Drama Festival. No. What were your, oh, that's really magic, I wish I could do that. What names would you pull out of the closet then?
Well, the first one really was Lebo Mashile. She had this, you know, the text was compelling, but her way of performing it was also compelling. It was a show in Johannesburg that I saw her in, and Linton Kwesi Johnson. And I guess when you see the two, you see how people bring themselves and where they're coming from in their work. Yeah. Then the first book of poems I bought actually was Keorapetse Kozitsile, who's also South African. Right. But one of you know.
Yeah. But Linton Kwesi Johnson, he's a Brit. And,
yes, but by way of Jamaica and Caribbean.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, come, we go down there. You thought this was it.
Well,
you know, because yeah.
I mean, it has its, you know, I have written 2 Caribbean poems, but it has its, you know, I mean, but they're not it's not like I'm gonna be a dub poet,
right,
you know.
Right.
There's also Frank O'Hara, there's Adam Zagajewski, who wrote this beautiful piece on 9/11 that I still love. Mary Oliver, you know, is a popular one. You know, sometimes it's bad to say E.E. Cummings, but he's also queer. Right. You know, there's a whole school of them.
Right. So E.E. Cummings with the small initials and yes, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, first of all, we've talked about the influences. Perhaps you'd read, just to give us a flavour of the kind of poetry that you've come out with in the past.
Sure. I'll read from Blue Mother Tongue, which is my first collection of poems. Sins we committed.
Right.
Sins we committed. Umau has given up on us. He says if we could teach our children a few words to call their mother Mwaitu, their father Now, their grandfather Umau, it shall be enough to root them. Shall have to be. He gave up before the 60s. Mummy was raised on Jesus, school, and English. Umau knew and was told Akamba wisdom was irrelevant to the future, couldn't give his children the luxury to learn a phrase like psychic pain. Daddy says I speak Kikamba like a Doluo. My tone goes up when it should go down. At Umau's church, a spectacle unfolds. The outsider says, Andumangai ekani mukiedhia sietwani ya Yesu Kristo muyaseo. They laugh. Umau explains they did not expect so much, didn't hope to hear me greet them in their own tongue. My tongue. The village of my grandparents is happy for me. I am doing well.
Thematic concerns. Umau, hearing that fresh, I come to it that you're talking about this idea of you being Kamba and having been sort of alienated from the village, your roots, and people being amazed that you can come out with a sentence in your mother tongue. And this is what gives you're doing well in the sense that you're coming closer to your people. Is this one of the concerns that's going to, this sort of, your schizophrenic, split between two worlds?
Yeah.
Is that one of the themes?
Yeah, identity is a big one for me, and who we are. You know, you travel around Kenya and you can't be from Nairobi, you know, and Nairobi children, a lot of us don't know our mother tongues because they weren't emphasized, you know. I feel like sometimes my parents expected me to kind of learn Kikamba via osmosis or something. It wasn't, because that's how they did it, you know, on some level.
To a point now, is there a point where I've met people who are making a conscious effort to learn, so
yeah.
Do you feel this urge, and basically a criticism of mum and dad for not having urged you to learn it? Would you say that?
I actually, when I came back from college, I did take Kamba classes because I was trying to go to my grandfather's and, you know, sit at his feet and, you know, do the 3 stones and the stories and all that. And know, you know, who I am via his story, you know, kind of like my lineage, my kind of what has formed.
Right, from the horse's mouth, as
exactly.
in grandpa. And you felt this was a great lack.
Yeah, I'm not there yet.
So in the great language debate, you're very much for let there be 100 languages milling around in Kenya that speak to our roots.
Yeah, and let us also not just know our own mother tongues, but also the mother tongues of others. It was really inspiring to me to be in Johannesburg and having, listening to a conversation that's happening in Xhosa, Zulu and Tswana at the same time, and people just responding to totally understanding each other and responding in their own languages and being understood. That kind of multiplicity, because here we've emphasized just speak your mother tongue, yeah, and Kiswahili and English, and then French and German or whatever.
Right, but I would go a step further and say that you would be the target of some kind of dismissal, because there's been a debate here about some young Kenyan Asian singer who's done extremely well, lots of hits on Facebook, and the criticism that came back is that you're the object of privilege, you went to private schools, and who are you to make a video featuring women with Maasai beads walking around? You are not authentic.
Yeah.
You, Ngwatilo MAWIYOO, are not a true Kenyan.
I don't know what there is then, because this is all I got. It's a false criticism, I think, on some level, because it assumes that, and it's actually saying that that experience is invalid as one that would come from this place and be born in this place, It's not, perhaps it's not the majority of experience, but I think each one of us, have, our experience is valid as individuals, and we can do whatever we want with that, and I think speak from that. I think, I think one should speak from what they know, and they can also expand what they know. I think no one will think that's why people go to school, to expand what they know, right? So, like, if you're doing the Maasai beads, because you needed to look Kenyan, I think it's problematic. It's the same as having like a lion in the background. What are you saying? What are you?
So there is a tacit criticism from you of having this sort of stereotypical view of what is African.
We have to expand it.
We have to expand it.
Yeah.
Time now for perhaps another taster. I think we'll have poem number 2.
Okay.